Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
One of my friends who was in the midst of marital difficulties had a friend to tell her that her husband was such a blessing. She vented to me that she couldn't possibly see how her husband was a blessing to her. Telling her how wonderfully blessed I was to have my sweet husband wouldn't have helped her at that point. We had about an hour together, so I suggested we meditate on how even a difficult husband could be a blessing to a Christian wife. I'm sure what we came up with would go the other way, too. Difficult wives can be a blessing for Christian husbands. Even difficult friendships, God can use to refine us. So here's 7 ways that we came up with that God uses our spouse to grow us as a Christian. See which ones you can apply to your marriage or other relationships in your life. First, our husbands give us the opportunity to serve and become more like Christ. Remember in John 13, 1-7, when Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, including Judas, who was about to betray him? Being part of a marriage or other relationship provides us with plenty of service opportunities, whether it's cooking and serving food, washing dishes, or cleaning muddy footprints right after you've mopped the floor. And actually, the more self-centered the spouse is, the more opportunities you get to serve. Of course, serving with a happy heart, out of love, is the key to becoming more like Christ. Secondly, as we learn to submit to our husband, we're learning to submit to God. Both Ephesians 5:22 and Colossians 3:18 tell wives to submit to our own husband as to the Lord. But as Beth Moore's character told Priscilla Shirer's character in the movie War Room, sometimes submission is learning to duck so God can hit your husband. Submission is often misunderstood, but if it's done biblically, it seems rather painless. It's easier to submit to a man who loves you as the Bible tells him to. It's much more difficult to submit to one who loves himself more than he loves you or God. But the practice of submitting to our husbands, just like children submitting to parents, gives us practice submitting to our loving God and His plan. Third, our job as wives is to pray for our husbands. When we do that, we can see God working in his life, whether or not our husband realizes it. And that builds our faith. James 5:16 says, "The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much." Or, "The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results." Of course, that all depends on the one praying being righteous, which means we need to be sure our lives and attitudes are above reproach. Fourth, we get to have the opportunity to be a blessing to our husband, therefore blessing ourselves in the process. We want to be the type of wives that other people will look at and tell our husbands, "You have quite a gym there." Fifthly, God can use our husbands to develop the fruits of the Spirit in us, like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Can't you see how dealing with someone every day, whether they're difficult or not, would grow those qualities in us? Sixth, dealing with a difficult husband can make a wife more closely identify with Jesus because she often feels hurt and betrayed. Yet God wants her to be loving and forgiving. I think here I ought to pause and remind my listeners that we're talking about a difficult spouse, not an abusive one. That's a whole different subject. Lastly, God grows us and matures us spiritually through a marriage relationship, whether a difficult one like my friend's or a really good one like mine and my husband's. This is because neither partner in a marriage or even in a friendship is perfect. And the deeper you go in a relationship, the more obvious your faults and failures are. So we can thank God for even difficult relationships because He uses them to refine us and make us more like His Son. How are difficult relationships in your life refining you?
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.